next guest has fought all the greats. He was inducted into the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame in 1990, the World Boxing Hall of Fame in 1997. He's made a member of the Order of Canada in 1998 and awarded a star on Canada's Walk of Fame in 2005. He's an absolute legend, fighting the likes of Muhammad Ali, you name it, everyone. And now Floyd Patterson, Joe Frazier, George Foreman. And he's here today, George Chuvalo. Once again, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So, George, take us through a little bit. You're born in Toronto. At what point, at what age do you go, you know what, I'm kind of a tough guy. I'll try this boxing game? Well,
that happened at a pretty young age. Actually, I was about 9 years old, and I remember going to a place called Morgan's Cigar Store, and they had a magazine rack. And they had a bunch of sporting magazines, and I saw a magazine called The Ring, boxing magazine. It called itself The Bible of Boxing, as it does today, still around. So I opened up the pages and saw the guys with muscles punching each other. And I said to myself, oh, that's for me. I got to go home, tell my mom I want to get a set of boxing gloves. So I run home. I said, Mom, you got to get me a set of boxing gloves. I want to be a fighter. Well, she kind of laughed. She said, I want to be a fighter.
9 years old.
9 years old. Anyway, I kept hounding her week after week. So she finally went down to Eaton's one day and come back with a set of gloves, 4 gloves, wine-colored gloves, big like sparring gloves. So I would take the gloves and I'd go across the street, up a laneway, into the unpaved parking lot of Lancha Macaroni. And I'd go up there with my buddies and box with them. And actually I had a bit of an advantage, I think, in some ways. I used to read the sporting cards of Kellogg's cornflakes and shredded wheat. They used to have all the sporting cards, and some of the cards were boxing, and it showed you how to throw a jab to the body. Next time you feint a jab to the body and throw a hook to the head. So I would practice these things on my buddies. And one day, an older guy, when I say older, he was in his late teens, said to me, and I was only about 10 years old, he said to me, George, you're pretty good with your dukes. Why don't you go to a gym? I said, where's there a gym? He said, at St. Mary's Polish Roman Catholic Church in the basement. So I go to the gym. And there was an older gentleman there who was once a professional fighter. He shared the same name as an infamous bank robber at large at the time, Mickey McDonald. And anyway, he was a real nice guy, older gentleman, nice guy. And he trained me, and that's how I started.
And obviously a career record of 73 wins, 64 of them being knockouts, 18 losses, and a couple of draws. At what age were you in your first professional fight?
I was 18 years old.
18 years old, and was that the legal age for professional fights to happen?
It had to be at least 18 to turn pro in Ontario. I think it's the same today.
And you know, you had the trainers. You're doing this in the gym. Did everyone know that you were destined for greatness? Was that very evident when you first started?
I first started at the age of 10. You know, and I did. I think I had something in me that was a little better than most of the other guys. You know, so and it came, you know, so when I went out and boxed as many times as I did, I didn't fight too often in the amateur ranks because I was a heavyweight at 15 and there weren't that many heavyweights fighting at the time. So anyway, I went through my career, and I went to I fought in Regina for the for the Canadian title as an amateur. I won the title out there at the age of 17, and there weren't too many people for me to fight around here at 17, so I turned pro at 18. I fought in a thing called Jack Dempsey's heavyweight tournament, and it was an amateur tournament, except you got paid for it. So I knocked out 4 guys in one night.
Just 4.
And 12 minutes and 36 seconds total. And that was it. That's how I got started in the pro ranks.
Wow, unbelievable! You're just so tough, so strong. What was the training like back then? Was any of it weights? Was it the skipping the ropes? I'm not a big boxing guy. I don't know. What was the training?
Boxing hasn't really changed much that way in terms of training. You get up in the morning, you run. You know, I used to run in Hyde Park. That was the best place in the world to run as far as I was concerned. And I'd run there, and I'd train in the afternoon at the gym. And the workouts are basically shadow boxing. Sparring, hitting the heavy bag, hitting the fast bag, hitting the floor-to-ceiling bag, and doing various exercises in the gym like chin-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, and stuff like that. And boxing hasn't changed that much training-wise over the course of the years. Since I've been around, it hasn't changed much at all.
At what point do you find out, George Chuvalo, you have an opportunity to fight Muhammad Ali?
Well, that came about because of a falling out with Ernie Terrell and Muhammad Ali. Ernie Terrell was supposed to fight Muhammad Ali, and for whatever reason, he backed out of the fight. When it was shifted to Toronto, he was supposed to fight in Montreal. Then, for whatever reason, he pulled out of the fight, and then they called me. If I wanted to fight Muhammad, it was like 17 days notice. 17
days notice.
I said, sure, I'm not doing it that night. I had a bit of fun because I remember they said, George, you want to fight Ali? I said, well, just stay on the line. I'm going to phone my wife and see if we're doing anything that night. So I phoned my wife. I said, Lydia, honey, what are we doing on the 29th of this month? What are we doing on the 29th of this month? She said, nothing. Why? Why you ask me? I said, well, you're going to the fights. Who's fighting? Me. Who are you fighting? Muhammad Ali. She started laughing. I said, no, the fight's for real. So anyway, so I got back on the other line with the promoter, and I said, yeah, it's okay. We're not doing that night, my wife and I, so I'm free for the night, and I'll fight. And that's it. That's how the fight was made.
What a gentleman. Only 17 days of notice. Were you in the middle of training then, or were you always training? Or?
Well, I was training, but I wasn't training like I had a 15-round fight coming up, so I had to really go into high gear when I knew I was fighting. All of a sudden, the very next day, after I found out I was going to be fighting Ali, the very next day, I had about 5 sparring partners come up from the United States, and so I was well set that way. So I was happy to get the sparring partners. I mean, I only had 17 days notice, so I got as many guys up here as I could, and it worked out well. It was a tough grind, a tough 17-day grind to get in shape. You only have 17 days. It's not like a couple of months. Most guys on a world title fight have a couple of months advance notice, but I didn't. I had 17 days. But anyway, it worked out okay. And I was always in fairly decent shape anyway, so that was a plus on my end. And I had enough good work so that when the fight did come off, I was okay. People say to me, oh, it was a tough fight, you lost the fight, this and that. I said, yeah, but guess who went to the hospital after the fight, and guess who went dancing with his wife? Muhammad went to the hospital, St. Mike's Hospital, after the fight with bleeding kidneys, and I went dancing with my wife. Meantime, this is kind of funny. My son was talking, one of my younger sons was talking to Muhammad's wife one day, and they were talking about the fight, and I had banged Muhammad quite a bit around the kidneys. And she told my son that they couldn't have sex for a month and a half, and she was still mad at me. I couldn't get off the hook on that one.
Who won the fight? Well, Muhammad couldn't have sex for 6 weeks. I don't care what the decision was. Do you ever think to yourself, if maybe they gave you in that prime there, that first fight with Muhammad Ali, if they gave you that 2-3 normal months notice, that perhaps it might have been a different outcome? You lost the decision, but and some say you shouldn't have. But do you think maybe it could have knocked him down?
Well, it could have happened. I think I would have been in better shape if I did have the extra couple of months training. There's no question about that. And who knows what might have happened. Now, I never thought when I fought anybody, no matter who I fought, no matter what happened in the fight, I never thought before the fight that I would lose a fight. I never thought I would lose any fight. I don't care who I fought. I don't care if they were world champions or whatever. I never thought I was going to lose a fight. And I think that was the right attitude to have. And so if you're asking me now if I thought I could have beat Muhammad, I said, well, yeah, I think I could have. That fight fight was a very close fight. That wasn't like like sometimes people will say to me, George, you fought Muhammad in Toronto, and this, how'd that go? Did he really give it to you, or something like that? They asked me. I said, "Are you kidding?" He was the one who went to the hospital after the fight. He was the one with bleeding kidneys. He's the one that couldn't have sex for a month and a half. I could. He couldn't.
George Chuvalo is here. He called that his toughest opponent of his lifetime. Who was the toughest opponent of your lifetime?
I think the toughest guy to fight was Joe Frazier.
Yeah.
Joe was extremely aggressive, moved his head extremely well, hard to hit, and you got to be able to hit the guy to hurt him. And he was tough that way because he was very skilled at moving his head side to side and punching, slip a punch and counter, slip a punch and counter. He was my toughest fight ever.
You fought George Foreman too. It's funny. This generation, we know George Foreman's for the Foreman Grill. Most of us. Yeah. What was he like as an opponent?
Well, George was a big, strong guy, heavy hitter. He was. I think the hardest hitter I've ever fought was George Foreman, and when he hit you, you could feel it for a few days.
They say, George Chuvalo, that you have the one of the strongest chins ever in boxing, meaning that you could take a punch like no other.
Right.
The physics beyond this and the force that these guys hit you, has a doctor ever looked at you, George, and said, my goodness, you actually are a freak of nature. That you should not be able to withstand this kind of punishment?
Well, I think I have a pretty thick skull. At least my grade 5 teacher told me that. And I think I do have a thicker skull. I think I have, I'm lucky in another way, as I have a short neck. Mm-hmm. The shorter neck you have, this stands in your favor. Less chance for your brain to wobble when you get nailed, and and plus I was always aware of the fact that you have to have a strong neck. You have to have a strong shoulder girdle if you want to be able to take a punch. And ever since in my early years, in my early teens, I'd be standing on my head. Rocking my head back and forth. I'd be on the phone for half an hour sometimes, and I have a pillow on the floor, and my feet up. I'm upside down on the talking on the phone,
like that inversion bench type of
right.
thing.
And I'd be motoring my head back and forth and side to side for a half an hour a lot of times. So I took care of my taking a punch muscles much better than most guys would. And so in that regard, I had that advantage, and I was doing that since I was just a young kid.
Well, you're always talked about in the same sentences as the greats of all time in boxing. What a beautiful thing to have always by your side. You look at boxing today. Has it changed? You said the training regimen hasn't changed much, but has the boxing world changed at all in your opinion? Well,
I think the best boxers of any era was in the early 50s. The best fighters, Sugar Ray Robinson, middleweight, Sandy Sadler, and Wooly Pep, lightweights, Ike Williams, lightweight, Gus Lesovich, light heavyweight, Jake LaMotta, middleweight. I mean, Carmen Basilio, welterweight. You had great fighters. Every fighter, every champion in every division was a great fighter. And they had a lot of contenders, and they were loaded in the top 10. You wouldn't have to go very far down the list of the 10 guys, and then the other guys, maybe some guy number 20 in the world. They're all good fighters. They had a lot more fighters, and a lot more good fighters, a lot more great fighters, a lot of great contenders, and they were loaded. We used to watch the fights every Friday night on Gillette Cavalcade of Sports for 20 years, from 1944 to 64, and there were a lot of great fights, a lot of great fighters, and they had a lot of action. The guys in the old days had a lot of fights. Archie Moore, 257 fights, and we things like a lot of guys. I had almost 100, but a lot of the guys were 157, 190, 100. A lot of the old time fighters, they were well schooled, And by the time they quit, they'd been through the wars. They were, they knew that they were accomplished fighters. They were great fighters. There's so many of them, and it was quite an era.
Who does George Chuvalo think is the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time?
Muhammad Ali, plain and simple. too much speed for the average guy. A lot of people might think it was Joe Louis, but Joe had trouble with guys who moved. Joe had trouble with guys who stick and move. He had trouble with those kind of guys. And who was better at that than Muhammad Ali? Nobody.
What are your thoughts on Mike Tyson?
What do you think about Mike Tyson?
Yeah.
He was a tremendous force for a very short period of time, but he was a hell of a fighter. For that short period, he was a killer.
Is there ever resentment because, you guys really, I mean, this sport's been established for a long time. In the last, 2 decades specifically, the money really came into play. And I'm talking about where one fight you could retire and you're living like a king and your families are living like kings and queens. Do you ever get resentful for that stuff?
I don't get resentful. I just wish I was part of it. I don't mind if somebody else making that dough. That's good. But I would like to have been on it, but it didn't work out that way. How much money do you think I made clear when I fought Muhammad Ali the first time?
I mean, I'm getting clear 17 days notice back. 65 was it?
In 66.
66. Sorry, my apologies. 35 grand.
You're close.
Okay.
12,500.
You might as well have been a radio host. Okay.